Hey everyone, welcome back to OC Recovery's YouTube channel. I wanted to talk about how avoidance really steals the lives of so many people. And I think it's really important to highlight that. I'm not talking about stuff like, if you struggle with alcoholism, you're trying to avoid alcohol and stuff like that to really better your lives. That's not what I'm talking about. And it's also important to highlight that that's actually such a small piece of what people are actually avoiding, which kind of sets themselves up for disaster, in my opinion, from a more kind of what we call that LFT, low frustration tolerance, what Dr. Albert Ellis coined when he was kind of creating the principles of REBT, rational emotive behavioral therapy, because for a long time he was a psychoanalyst using the Freudian theory, diving a lot into the past. And the past definitely can have importance in your life. I mean, myself, I had a lot of belief systems that were instilled from my parents because subconsciously and unconsciously, you're really taking on a lot of those belief systems. But when you get older, it really is your responsibility to change your beliefs. It's also your responsibility on how you react to certain things. So before I go any further, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, share this. It's really important to get that information out there. And let's talk about avoidance. So in life, there are many people who avoid many things. And let's talk about some of the things that what people avoid. They avoid caffeine. They're very black and white. Caffeine's bad, caffeine's good. There's no such thing. Caffeine is not inherently bad. Caffeine is not inherently good. It's the way that you do it, what you're putting in the coffee. Are you putting 25 cups of sugar in it? Are you putting heavy creamer in it and stuff like that? And even that's not the end of the world, and balance is key. Is alcohol inherently good or bad? Again, not talking about alcoholism. Alcohol is not inherently good or bad. There's been benefits shown in studies with red wine and everything. I'm not talking from an OCD perspective. I'm just talking about black and white avoidance in general. Social media. Social media is not inherently good or bad. Once you understand the context of social media and you learn how to balance it. TikTok is not the worst thing for you. If you're on TikTok 9 hours a day, it's probably not good for your life. And avoiding conversations with people with different opinions. So a lot of the exposures I set for myself, this is not something I did with OCD recovery, although we did talk about it, me and Rob. I set these myself. I had conversations with people who had totally different belief systems on economics, on politics, on anything with money, on religion, on border control, on anything you could think of that society considers a hot topic. Nothing is actually a hot topic. There's no such thing as a hot topic. There's topics that people are really irrational about. That's how I see it. The only reason something is considered hot is because people have a very hard time thinking about these topics in a Stoic perspective, and they think about them in very black and white manners, which is usually not good for the human condition, in my opinion. So when you look at the principles of Stoicism, what Stoicism really is you have something that happens to you in your life. Okay, let's take this pen. So this pen is scratching me right now. It's scratching me across my hand. Now there's a couple different ways you can look at this scratching. Number one, you look at it as terrible, horrible. I can't stand it. This is the worst thing ever. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It's understandable why you would think that, but is that belief actually setting you up for good emotional outcomes in your life? Remember, Stoicism isn't the lack of emotions, it's the regulation of emotions. I still get angry at time to time, but that extreme chronic resentment and rage doesn't really happen anymore because I see life in a much more Stoic perspective. So that's really important to cover. The second thing to go over, if you think about it like this, is let's say that I'm being scratched and I think to myself, this isn't the end of the world. It could be a lot worse. It's not terrible the way I imagine. Well, the reason why this is so critical is because in your mind, when you learn to accept the presence of something without needing it to go away forever, your emotional outcome will probably be a little bit better than if you tell yourself over and over again you can't stand it and this is the worst thing ever. It sounds like a subtle difference. Moment and I did a video that just came out on the channel today, June 2nd. And we were talking about identity and like the problems that people come across when they identify as things. Like, I'm a basketball player. Well, not really. You're a person who bounces a basketball. It's one trait of millions of complex moving traits about you. There's no such thing as a good and bad person. We talk about that all the time. Breaking down these very big overgeneralization, black and white statements that OCD sufferers tend to partake in is really a big problem when it comes to just looking at things in a certain way. This is so critical to cover. It's absolutely critical. So what tends to happen is when you're going through something tough, whether it's a mental health disorder recovery, starting a business, what a lot of people will do is, like, you got to do these things. You got to do these things if you want to be successful. These are the things you have to do. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And that's just not true. Now, there's things that we know that definitely help, right? Being structured and being organized and being lifestyle factors. But then there's people out there that have no structure, no lifestyle factors, no chronic anxiety, no chronic shame, no chronic guilt, 50% body fat, smoking cigarettes, drinking their, away. And while I wouldn't say that's particularly healthy, they might live very peaceful, content lives. It's just not the way that we see it. So when we have a goal, we tend to avoid everything that could disrupt that goal. And that's a big, big fucking problem. It's a big problem. It's black and white. It's an overgeneralization. And the kickback is always, well, I don't want to be, let's say it's something about politics, right? Politics is always a great one because it gets people riled up. I can have any political conversation without getting riled up anymore about anything, any policy, any viewpoint. The reason why people avoid talking about money, religion, and politics is because of the way that people have proclaimed to you that those are hot topics, that they're easily offendable topics. Remember, being offended is an inside job. When you are offended, it is your fault. When you are offended, it is your fault. No one else but your own. Majority. If the person's telling you you're a loser and you're a piece of shit and you're not going to go anywhere, yeah, that could sting, but you could certainly get to a point where it doesn't bring you to being into offended. This is why when people make OCD jokes, in my profession, I see people make, say they have OCD all the time. I'll go into it and ask them in their paperwork, they could tell me about that. And they're like, I just really like things organized. I thought the same thing before I had OCD. Why would I get mad at them? I don't have to be heard. I don't have to yell at them. Remember, too, a lot of the problems that we have in life is people needing to be heard. You think people need to hear you in order to be accepted. That's not that good. You don't need to be heard, and you don't need to be accepted. And this is so important for breaking down anything that has to do with avoidance and black and white belief systems. So, the big ones are always the caffeine, the social media, the alcohol. Again, now talk about alcoholism, leaving OCD forums. It's one of the biggest reasons that people have setbacks is they get better and then they run. I'm not saying you have to share your story. I really hope you do share your story, though, if you make progress. Maybe you haven't even made that much progress because there's someone behind you, someone that haven't left their house in 5 years. You might be chronically suffering, but going out, your story will help save someone's life. It can help save someone's life, and that's really, really important. So it's always about moderation and balance. Stoicism and Greco-Roman philosophy is about balance. Even Epicurus was about balance. He was a little bit too balanced for me because he was a huge minimalist. I think the philosophy is really, really cool. Epicureanism is really the actual true genesis of minimalism, in my opinion. Where Stoicism is more taking meaning from hardships and realizing that you have no control over other people, the actions in your life, and all you have long-term control over is the way that you react, which means that you could be in a prison cell like Nelson Mandela and still be free, or you could be someone who has everything in the world, $1 billion, all the intimacy you want, all the cars, all the boats, and be enslaved by your belief system. Think about what I just said. Nelson Mandela versus a billionaire, mentally free versus being enslaved. This happens all the time, and these belief systems and these avoidance behaviors that people partake in is really a big problem. I was talking to a friend of mine, and that friend said, I'm deleting everyone on my social media that I don't agree with. I used to do the same thing. I used to unfollow and block. You could just go over. What happens is, and what we tend to see is when you go throughout life with a belief system that life needs to be a certain way, this is a problem. Life just is. And many things are subjective. Many things are irrational from the perspectives of Stoicism and REBT principles. What one person might find rational, I might not find rational, and that's okay. Although I do abide by these, you always have to be with the possibility that you might be wrong. There's things I believed in for a very long time, and I found out I was wrong. I had to accept that. These are all part of the OCD and anxiety recovery journey. It's super important to realize that if you're avoiding conversations with people with different beliefs from you, it's really going to hinder your life. I promise you, it's really going to hinder your life. It's okay if someone disagrees with you. It's okay if someone's confrontational. The reason that, in my opinion, that we're having a lot of the problems that we're having today, especially in America, is because of the way that people's beliefs are. Let me give you a great example. When you move throughout life being put into a bubble, if you remember the movie The Bubble Boy, right? And if you left the bubble, he was going to get sick and die. And you're not exposed, to any hardships or anything difficult in your life, you're setting yourself up for disaster because life is full of hardships. And as Dr. Albert Ellis says, life is also called hassle. Life is also spelled hassle. It's one of my favorite lines in this book, How to Stubbornly Refuse, which this book is amazing because the reason why this book is the first book on the reading list is because it shows you why your avoidance behaviors are really keeping you stuck. And it's not even geared towards OCD. It's definitely geared to people who have neurosis, potentially psychosis. OCD is mentioned in here a little bit, but just general problems, relationship problems, money problems, work problems. And then telling yourself over and over again, you can't stand it and this is the worst thing ever. But when you tell yourself over and over again that you can't stand it, it's going to seem a lot worse than it actually is. So if you tell yourself over and over and over and over and over again that this is the worst thing ever, that my life is terrible, that I can't stand it, eventually you're going to believe it because you've told yourself that and you brought your low frustration tolerance. So there's a couple practical applications. I've been trying to throw in some practical takeaways in my videos so you guys can apply that yourselves. That's why I make so much content. Number one, look at the things you're avoiding. Places, people, conversations, anything. And try to add balance. Again, we're not talking about addictions here. We're talking about just straight out avoidance. And it's either all in or all out. And trust me, you're talking to the king of all in. So balance for me was super important. Have conversations with people that have different belief systems than you. This is so important. It's okay to have those conversations with people with different views. It's not the end of the world. And engage in things that you normally wouldn't engage in. If you want to go out and ride a bike, if you want to learn how to mountain climb, if you want to learn how to rock climb, if you want to learn how to play the violin, do those things. A lot of reasons why people avoid this are their fear of embarrassment, which is conditional self-acceptance. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Avoidance is something that really holds a lot of people back, and it hinders the lives of many people because people are unwilling to face discomfort. So thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, good for the algorithm, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.